We moved in on a grey Wednesday afternoon, the kind of day that felt like the sun had forgotten to rise. The gravel crunched under the U-Haul tyres as Tim rolled to a stop in front of the house. Our fresh start, as Mom put it, though none of us looked all that refreshed. The house was a squat, one-storey ranch set back far from the road, surrounded by tall grass and too much silence. No other houses in sight. Just an open field behind us that led to a distant tree line, and a weathered old well leaning slightly like it was drunk. There was something wrong about it all. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just off. The house looked like it had been trying to disappear for years. Tim killed the engine and grinned over his shoulder. Home sweet home. Phil groaned audibly. It looks like where serial killers go to retire. Phil, Mum said sharply, one hand resting on her swollen belly. She was pale again. She'd been like that a lot lately. The doctor back in the city had told her to take it easy, but she'd insisted on moving with us. Let's just get the boxes inside before it rains. The place smelled like dry rot and rust. The porch sagged under our feet. Inside, the floors creaked like they were straining to hold themselves together. The wallpaper in the hallway was peeling in long, curling strips. The air was stale, heavy, like it hadn't been breathed in years. But it did feel like something had happened here. You could feel it in your chest. A pressure, like the house was holding its breath. The bedrooms were small and dim. Phil grabbed the larger one immediately, not even pretending to ask. I got stuck with the one closest to the hall bathroom. The floor slanted slightly, and the only window faced the backyard. Just open grass leading straight into a wall of trees. No fence, no border, just forest. And then there was the mirror. The bathroom was old, with cracked tile and rust stains in the sink. But the mirror above it was new, too new, like someone had installed it recently, almost like a replacement. When I looked into it, I got a weird feeling in my gut, like vertigo. My reflection looked back at me, but slightly off. Maybe it was the lighting, or maybe just nerves from the move, but it almost seemed like my reflection blinked half a second too late. I didn't say anything. Not to Phil, not to Mom. I was 13, not a little kid. I knew better than to talk about creepy vibes. That night, we had pizza on the living room floor. No furniture yet, just boxes and cold air. Tim poured himself a glass of whiskey and Coke and said he'd have to head back on the road for work by the weekend. He drove trucks across the province and was gone more often than not. Should only be a couple of nights, he said, if nothing gets delayed. Mom didn't answer. She sat with her legs stretched out and her hand on her belly, breathing slowly. She looked like she wanted to be anywhere but here. Later, when everyone had gone to bed, I got up to use the bathroom. That's when I heard it, a soft tapping, not fast, not aggressive, just deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the mirror. I stopped in the hallway and listened. The house was dead silent otherwise. No wind, no pipes, just that steady, patient tapping. I opened the door. The light flickered, buzzed to life. The mirror was fogged up. Nobody had showered. I hadn't even flushed the toilet yet. And then, as I stood there watching, something began to form in the fog. Let him sleep. 3 words traced into the mist, like someone had written it from the other side of the glass. The handwriting was jagged, almost frantic. My blood ran cold. I didn't move. Behind me, the floor creaked. I turned. Phil was standing there in the dark hallway, his arms at his sides. He blinked at me, half asleep. "What are you doing?" he muttered. rubbing one eye. I looked back at the mirror. The message was gone. Nothing but a clear reflection of me and my idiot brother behind me. "You didn't," I started. "Did you write on the mirror?" Phil stared at me like I was nuts. "What?" "It said something. A message. In steam." "Dude, it's dry in here. You're dreaming with your eyes open." He turned and shuffled back toward his room, muttering, "Whatever, man." I stayed there for a few more seconds, just staring at the mirror. I leaned forward, breathing slowly. The glass didn't fog, but I felt cold. Not like a chill from outside. Something else. Like the cold you get when you realize you've forgotten something important, and it's coming back to punish you for it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak, every groan from the house made my chest tighten. Sometime after midnight, I heard footsteps. Light ones. Slow. I thought it was Tim or Phil getting up to pee. But when I sat up and peeked into the hallway, there was no one there, except the bathroom light was on. The door creaked open just a little, and Phil was standing in front of the mirror, not moving, not blinking, just staring. I stepped out into the hall and called his name softly. "Phil." He didn't respond. He just mouthed something silently, his lips moving like he was trying to remember how to speak. I walked closer. My hand was shaking. "Phil." As I reached out to touch his shoulder, he gasped and spun around, eyes wide. "Jesus, Josh," he snapped. "What the hell are you doing?" "You were sleepwalking," I said. "No, I was using the bathroom," he muttered, rubbing his forehead. "God, what is with you tonight?" He pushed past me and went back to his room. I looked once more into the mirror. Nothing, just my own reflection. But for the briefest moment, barely a second, I thought I saw someone else standing just behind me in the reflection. Someone tall and still and breathing. Mom left 3 days after we moved in. It wasn't sudden. She'd been getting weaker ever since the move, resting more, eating less, always looking off like she was hearing something the rest of us couldn't. At first, she chalked it up to exhaustion. Then came the chest pains and dizziness. Tim drove her to the hospital in the city, while Phil and I stayed behind. "No point in dragging the boys back and forth," he said. "We'll be back soon. Couple days tops." Before they left, Mum pulled Phil aside. "Take care of Josh, okay?" she said quietly, pressing his arm. "Watch out for him." Phil nodded, looking serious for once. "I will," he promised. I wanted to say something, but I just watched them walk out the door, Mum clutching her belly like it weighed more than her whole body. Phil didn't seem fazed. He shrugged and went back to turning on his PlayStation. Cool, house to ourselves. The silence that followed felt different. Not peaceful, not quiet, vacant. That night it rained, heavy enough that the wind shook the siding and turned the windows into moving shadows. Phil passed out early with his headphones in, snoring like he hadn't a care in the world. I couldn't sleep, not with the house creaking like it was stretching itself awake. Our old basement, the one with the blood-red walls and worn 70s carpet, was down a short set of stairs right off the living room. I remembered Tim mentioning it felt like a holding cell from back when the property was used for patients or something. But then there was the bathroom. The main bathroom had a door that was sealed shut, or so we thought. At around 1 a.m., I got up to get water. The hallway was colder than the rest of the house, even though the vents were open. The old carpet sucked at my feet like it didn't want to let me pass. As I passed the bathroom, I noticed something weird. The sealed door was ajar, barely, just a crack. I froze. That door had been painted over thickly, like someone wanted to erase it completely. Tim had joked there might be a raccoon behind it, but now the paint had flaked around the edges, and I could see a thin line of shadow between the frame and the door. I reached out and pushed it open. It creaked, loudly. Dust puffed out like breath. Behind it, narrow concrete stairs descended into darkness. A second basement, not the one off the living room. This one was colder, unfinished. I could feel the air rising from it. It smelled like wet stone and metal, and something else, something sour. I should have closed the door, gone back to bed, pretended I never saw it. Instead, I flicked on the flashlight on my phone and stepped down. The staircase groaned under my weight. Cobwebs brushed my face, and I swatted at them with shaking hands. The beam of light cut through the black, revealing old concrete walls stained dark with time. The air grew thicker with each step. My ears felt like they were ringing. At the bottom, the basement opened into a wide, rectangular room. Empty, except for a single massive hole in the middle of the floor. Not a pit, not a crack. A hole, carved intentionally, like someone had dug it out with purpose. The edges were smooth, too smooth. I moved closer and pointed the flashlight down. The beam didn't reach the bottom. My skin went cold. I felt like I was standing at the edge of something watching me back. There was a noise behind me, soft, dragging. I spun around, shining the light across the walls. Nothing, except my light caught something. Writing, etched into the concrete. It wasn't paint or marker. It had been scraped into the wall itself with something sharp. He's still here. Below it, a crude drawing of a figure, tall, thin, its arms hanging down past its knees. No face, just a dark circle for a head. Suddenly, I heard footsteps above me, heavy, pacing. Phil! I bolted up the stairs 2 at a time, slamming the door shut behind me. My breath came out in sharp gasps. I stood in the hallway, heart pounding, waiting for Phil to yell at me for stomping around. But the house was silent. His door was closed. I didn't dare open it. I slept on the couch that night with all the lights on. The next morning, Phil found me curled up under an old quilt. "You look like crap," he said. I didn't answer. I just pointed down the hallway. The second basement door, it was open. Phil stared at me. "What second basement?" I sat up. "The one in the bathroom. It was sealed, but I swear, last night He cut me off. "That's not a basement. Tim said it was a utility closet full of sealed pipes or something. There's no stairs." I saw them. Phil shrugged, unconvinced. "Well, it's closed now." He turned back toward the kitchen and froze. "What?" I asked. He slowly raised a hand and pointed to the wall beside the fridge. Carved into the wood paneling, deep and jagged, were the words, "Let him sleep." Phil looked at me. "I didn't do that," I whispered. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. I didn't talk about the second basement again. Neither did Phil. It was easier that way, just pretending nothing happened. Like we didn't see the words scratched into the wall. Like I hadn't seen stairs that he claimed didn't exist. But pretending only worked during the day. Nights were different. Things started to happen. Small at first. Lights flickering even though the bulbs were brand new. The hallway growing colder than the rest of the house. Sounds, soft, whispering sounds, when no one was talking. Phil said it was the house settling, but I caught him glancing over his shoulder more and more. On the fourth night after Mom left, I woke up to static. I didn't even own a radio. It was coming from the living room. I sat up, heart already pounding. The hissing sound grew louder with each step as I moved down the hallway. As I neared the living room, I saw it. The television was on. Just white noise. The screen flickered violently, snow and static dancing like bugs trapped behind glass. No remote in sight. I reached out, hands shaking, and went to turn the dial. Before I could touch it, the static cut out and the screen went black. That would have been fine, normal even. But then the screen flashed, just once. A face, not mine. There for less than a second, but burned into my mind. Hollow black eyes, no nose, a mouth that opened wider than it should. Not a scream, just open, like it was swallowing the dark. Then nothing. I turned the TV off and backed away. Behind me, I heard a creak. I turned, and there was Phil, standing in the hallway, watching. "You see that?" I asked. He didn't answer, just blinked slowly, then turned and walked back to his room without saying a word. He barely spoke the next day. He didn't eat much either, just pushed his cereal around with a spoon and stared into it like it might start moving. Once, I saw him standing in front of the wall next to the fridge again, where "Let him sleep" was carved. His fingers traced each letter carefully, like he was trying to understand them or memorize them. By that evening, the power was gone. The lights died in the middle of dinner, not just in our house, all down the road, all down the city. Nothing worked. The digital clocks went black. The radio was dead static. The fridge kicked off with a mechanical sigh. We lit a few candles we found under the sink and sat in silence, listening to the wind hit the windows. Outside, everything was pitch black. The woods were just silhouettes now, darker than the sky behind them. Inside, the house felt hollow. I kept glancing down the hallway toward the bathroom, the one with the sealed door, the one I knew had stairs behind it, even if Phil said there were none. Then Phil stood up. "I'm going to check the basement." I looked up. "The red one?" He didn't respond. I followed him to the short flight of stairs off the living room, the ones that led down into the original basement, the one with blood-red walls and old 70s carpet that squished underfoot like a sponge. We barely went down there, even during the day. Phil stood at the top step and stared into the dark. Then he whispered, "He's walking now." "What?" He looked over his shoulder. His face was lit orange by candlelight, but his eyes looked wrong, not afraid, just empty. "He's not in the hole anymore," Phil said. "I heard him crawling up." I grabbed his arm. "Phil, what are you talking about?" He didn't even flinch. "I think he likes the red carpet." Then he started walking down the steps. I didn't follow. I wanted to, but something about the way he said it, casual, like he was talking about a cat or a neighbor, made the hairs on my neck stand up. The candlelight disappeared behind the stairwell wall. I waited. Then I heard the footsteps, not Phil's. His were quiet, barefoot, soft. These were heavy. Thud, thud, thud. Coming up. I ran back to my room, slammed the door, dragged my desk in front of it, and climbed into bed with the covers over my head like a 5-year-old kid. I must have stayed like that for an hour. Then, knock, knock. "Josh." "Phil." His voice was quiet, right outside my door. I opened it slowly. He was standing there alone, no candle now. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. I think I had a weird dream." I wanted to believe him, but then I looked down at his feet. They were filthy, covered in bits of red carpet fiber and dirt, like he'd been standing in one place for too long, someplace nobody should be. Phil didn't remember going downstairs, or at least that's what he told me the next morning. I wanted to believe him. He acted normal enough, normal for him lately. He made toast. He looked through the pantry like he might actually eat something. But his eyes didn't focus right, like he was thinking through a fog he couldn't push past. "You really don't remember?" I asked. He shook his head, chewing slowly. "I had a dream. I thought I was sleepwalking." He left it at that. But something about the way he touched the hallway wall on his way to the bathroom, slow, fingers trailing along the wood like it was familiar, told me he remembered more than he was saying. The power was still out. The house felt heavier with each passing hour. No hum of the fridge, no buzz from the lights, just whine through the trees outside and the groaning silence of the old foundation beneath us. The silence made me think too much. About Mom, about whether she was okay, when Tim would be back. We had no way to contact anyone. The landline hadn't worked since we moved in. I couldn't stop pacing, around the living room, down the hall, circling the kitchen island. At some point, I went back to my bedroom. I don't even remember why. Habit, maybe. But when I opened the door, I stopped cold. There was a piece of paper on my bed. It hadn't been there before, I was sure of it. I'd made the bed myself that morning. I always did. It gave me something to do. The paper looked old, yellowed around the edges, a single corner torn like it had been ripped from a notebook years ago. There was writing on it, a child's handwriting, blocky and uneven. "Don't go under the red. Don't look for the man in the wrong skin. Sleep only when he sleeps. And never answer him if he knows your name." I stared at it for a long time, trying to make sense of the words. The man in the wrong skin. Was this some kind of prank? "Phil?" I called. He didn't answer. I walked out into the hallway and found him sitting cross-legged in front of the sealed bathroom door, just staring at it. "What are you doing?" I asked. He blinked slowly. "Listening." My mouth went dry. "To what?" "There's knocking." I listened. Nothing. "Phil," I said, trying to stay calm, "did you leave a note on my bed?" He turned his head slowly toward me. His eyes were bloodshot. "What note?" I held it out. He didn't touch it, just stared at it for a moment, then shook his head. "Number, that's not mine. That looks old." It felt old too, like it had soaked up time from the walls. It smelled faintly of mold and dust and something I couldn't place, like burnt hair or wet stone. "Where did it come from?" I whispered. Phil didn't answer. He stood up and walked to his room without saying another word. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind was loud, louder than normal. It almost sounded like voices if you listened too long. I kept my candle burning even when it started to drip wax onto the desk. I kept the note under my pillow, like that might protect me from whatever wrote it. Then, just after midnight, I heard it, knocking. 3 slow knocks from somewhere inside the house. I got up and opened my door. The hallway was dark, no candlelight from Phil's room. I moved toward his door. Knock, knock, knock. Not from downstairs, from inside his room. I pushed the door open. Phil wasn't there. His bed was empty, sheets untouched. But on the floor, in the exact center of the room, was a single red fiber, carpet. He'd gone back down, even though he said he didn't remember, even though he promised he wouldn't. He'd gone back to the red room. I waited until morning. I wish I'd had the nerve to go after Phil that night. but something told me not to. Like a hand on my shoulder, invisible but firm. Wait until daylight. Even if daylight didn't mean much anymore, when I finally went down to the red basement, the smell hit me first. Dampness, like old soil, mildew, and something else, sharp, like rusted metal or dried blood, even though nothing looked out of place. The basement hadn't changed physically. The same blood-colored walls, the same sagging 70s carpet with patterns like bloated organs, the same water-stained ceiling tiles overhead that made it feel like a room that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Phil was sitting in the far corner with his back to me. He didn't turn around when I stepped off the last stair. "Phil?" He didn't move. I took a step closer. My foot sank slightly into the spongy carpet, and it let out a squelch like something exhaling underneath. That's when I saw it. The corner. The part of the room where Phil was sitting. There was something there. A shape. I froze. It was hunched. Wrong. The size of a person, but not shaped like one. Pale and trembling like wet wax trying to form itself into something human. The skin rippled as if something underneath was wearing it, but not well. It was facing the wall. Phil was whispering to it. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see the way his jaw moved quickly, urgently, like he was trying to comfort it or plead with it. Then I saw the paper. He was holding one. Folded, old, just like the one I'd found. He turned his head a little when he heard me step closer, but he didn't seem surprised. "He doesn't like the light," Phil said. What is that?" Phil smiled a little, like I'd asked a joke. Phil didn't answer. He looked back toward the shape, then he whispered, "Ask him what time it is." I took a step back. "Phil, we need to go." "He doesn't sleep anymore," Phil went on, ignoring me. "That's why I couldn't. I stayed up with him. He likes company. Please come upstairs." But Phil was lost now, just muttering, nodding, smiling at something I couldn't see. Some exchange happening in the air between them that I didn't understand. And then the shape moved. Not fast, not loud. It just turned its head. There was no face. Just a stretch of flesh with too much skin. Like it had once had features and they were removed violently, then smoothed over. But underneath the translucent layer, I could see things pressing out from inside. Eye sockets, a mouth, a nose, moving under the surface like someone trapped inside a latex bag, suffocating. It began to stand. I bolted. I didn't look back. I ran upstairs, slammed the basement door shut, and dragged the heaviest chair I could find across the floor to brace it. I stood there for 5 full minutes, holding the chair, heart thundering in my ears. Phil didn't follow, and neither did the thing. When I finally let go and backed away, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. Phil had spoken to it, and it had answered, because he was holding a second note, and I had a feeling it hadn't been written by any living hand. We tried to act normal the next day. Phil came upstairs around noon without a word. He looked pale, dark shadows under his eyes like he hadn't slept, not really slept, for days. He smiled more, but it felt off. Quick, crooked, like a mask trying to remember the shape of a real face. He asked if I wanted to make lunch. I said sure, even though neither of us was really hungry. We dug through some boxes and found a half-empty box of spaghetti in the pantry. No sauce, no butter, just dry noodles and a pot of tap water, which we boiled over the gas stove using a lighter. We didn't talk about the basement, or the thing I'd seen, or the note Phil had been holding when I found him whispering to something in the corner of the red room. We just tried to be brothers again. You know, Phil said, stirring the noodles slowly, you can throw spaghetti at the wall to see if it's done. I raised an eyebrow. Seriously? He grinned. Yeah, if it sticks, then it's cooked. If it doesn't, it needs more time. When the noodles were soft enough, I fished a few out and walked them over to the far wall of the kitchen. The wallpaper there was faded yellow, peeling at the edges like old skin. I tossed the noodles. They slapped the wall and stuck for a second before peeling off and falling to the linoleum. Definitely not done, Phil said. He laughed. I laughed with him. It felt nice, real, for a second. Phil grabbed a few strands and threw his own test batch. They hit the wall and stuck a little better than mine. You're just trying to show me up, I said. He smirked and scooped a second clump of spaghetti out of the pot, twirled it in his hand like a baseball, and wound up for a full dramatic pitch. But this time, the noodles didn't hit the wall. They stopped in midair. There was a sound, a wet slap, but it came from the middle of the room. Then the spaghetti hit the floor. Phil stared at the space in front of the wall. He took a few steps forward and reached out slowly. His hand hovered, then flinched back like he'd touched a live wire. I felt something, he said. I stepped forward too, and instantly felt the pressure. The air was thicker, heavy, like humidity, but wrong, tinged with cold and something sharp, metallic. We stood frozen for a few seconds. Then something moved, not in front of us, in the hallway. A soft creak from the floorboards, followed by another and another. Heavy footfalls, coming from the hall that led toward the living room, toward the basement. Phil and I didn't move. The footsteps didn't rush. They didn't stomp. They just walked, slowly but purposefully, as if someone heavy and unseen was making their way back to the red basement. The sound passed right by the kitchen doorway, but we saw nothing. Just air, just dust, just thuds. Step, step, step. Then a pause. Then, thump. The door to the red basement creaked open on its own. We hadn't even heard it unlatch. The footsteps continued downward, faint now, muffled by the carpeted stairs. Step, step, and then silence. Phil turned to me, clearly shaken, his face pale and blank. He's going back down, he whispered. My throat tightened. Phil, what's going on? He swallowed, then looked at me. Not like my brother, but like someone who had seen something too big to explain. He doesn't like when we pretend he's not here. What is it? A ghost? A what? Phil didn't answer. Instead, he whispered, he wants to come up, but only when he's ready. The red basement door creaked again. This time, it closed on its own. The rest of that day was a blur. Phil barely spoke. After the spaghetti incident and the footsteps, he just drifted, back and forth between the kitchen, living room, and hallway, like he was tracing invisible paths, repeating motions he'd done 1,000 times, but never with awareness. He'd open a drawer, stare at it, then shut it. Sit on the couch for 5 minutes, then stand and leave. Sometimes I'd find him standing completely still at the living room window, staring out at the field beyond the yard. But it was the way he listened that got to me. Every creak of the floor, every wind gust outside, every little shift in the bones of this ancient house. Phil would freeze and tilt his head, like he was trying to catch a voice I couldn't hear. I spent that night watching the moonlight crawl across the floor. I don't know how long I laid there with my eyes open, listening to the house breathe, shift, and settle around us, like it was remembering we were inside it. In the middle of the night, I heard the toilet flush. A few seconds later, the bathroom door creaked open. Then nothing. I got up and padded into the hall, rubbing sleep from my eyes. "Phil?" No answer. I peeked into the bathroom. It was dark except for the soft silver of moonlight filtering in through the foggy window. The air was cold, too cold for spring. My breath fogged. I stepped inside. The silence felt tight, like I'd walked underwater. Then something pulled my attention toward the back wall, toward the old wooden door beside the toilet, the one nobody ever talked about. I crouched down. Every slat had been pried away just enough to suggest a presence, like someone had slowly, methodically started peeling the wall apart, then got interrupted, or distracted, or hungry. I backed away, heart thumping, and turned to call for Phil. But he was already standing in the hallway. He stared at me, unblinking. "You found the second basement," he said. My mouth went dry. "What?" His voice was flat, like he was reading it from somewhere in his head. "Behind that door, there's another staircase. It's where they used to keep the ones who couldn't be calmed down." "Phil, what are you talking about?" He didn't answer me. Instead, he stepped forward, knelt beside the door, and tugged at one of the loosened slats. The wood creaked open. Phil put his hand on it. "No," I whispered, taking a step back. "We don't need to go down there. Not now, not at night." He didn't move, just said, "Sometimes I can hear them down there." Scraping. A chill ran through me. "Phil." He turned toward me suddenly, eyes wide. His voice cracked. "You hear it too, don't you?" "I don't hear anything. Listen." And for a moment, I did, and I heard it. Tap, 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 scrape. Somewhere beneath the house, something was moving against concrete, like nails, like fingernails. Phil stood, and for the first time since we'd moved in, he looked genuinely afraid. "They're not ghosts," he whispered. I backed toward the door. "Then what are they?" He stared at the wooden frame. "They're the ones who were left behind." Just then, a cold thud echoed beneath the floorboards. Not from the red basement. Lower, it sounded like something had dropped from the ceiling straight into the second basement. A final sound followed. 3 knocks. I grabbed Phil's arm and yanked him from the bathroom. He didn't resist, but as we shut the door behind us, I swear I felt something lean against it from the other side. A weight, not trying to break through, just reminding us it was there. It started just after midnight. I had fallen asleep for once, dreamless, deep, until a sound jerked me awake like a fish on a hook. "Josh!" I sat up in bed. The voice was quiet, faint, but clear. "Josh, come here." It was Philip. At least, it sounded like him. I rubbed my eyes and glanced over. Phil's bed was empty, covers folded back. Maybe he'd gone to the bathroom. Maybe he was pacing again, talking to himself like he sometimes did when he was nervous. I stood up and listened. "Josh, I need help." His voice came again, but this time it was coming from the bathroom. My stomach tightened. The door was closed, faint light bleeding out from the cracks at the bottom. It was like my body moved before my brain had a say. I opened our bedroom door and stepped into the hallway, every floorboard under my feet feeling louder than it should have. "Come on, Josh. I'm stuck." It sounded muffled now, like it was coming from behind the old door in the bathroom wall. I opened the bathroom door slowly. The light was on. Empty, except the door to the second basement was ajar. Just a sliver, but open. I whispered, "Phil?" No response. I should have run, should have gone back to bed, pulled the covers over my head, and waited for daylight like a normal kid. But I didn't. I stepped inside and pushed the second basement door open the rest of the way. It groaned like a wounded animal. The air behind it smelled sharp. Concrete dust, mildew, something deeper, something old, and colder than anything I'd felt since we moved in. I hesitated, then grabbed the little flashlight from the medicine cabinet where we'd started keeping emergency stuff. It buzzed to life with a weak yellow glow. The stairs were bare concrete, steep and narrow, descending into blackness. "Phil." I tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. But I swear I felt him down there, or something like him. I stepped down. Each stair creaked, not because they were wood, but because the air pressure changed as I moved lower, like I was being swallowed by the house itself. 10 steps, 15. At the bottom was a small room. Concrete walls, no paint, no furniture. Just one dangling light bulb swinging slowly, though there was no wind, and the hole, about 5 feet wide, in the middle of the room. A jagged, open pit in the floor. I stepped closer, shined my flashlight down. The beam didn't hit the bottom, but it hit something else. Footprints. Not dusty outlines, wet ones, as if something had climbed out of that pit and dragged itself across the floor. Human in shape, long toes, spread too far apart. I turned to go back up the stairs and froze. There, standing at the top of the steps, was Phil. Only it wasn't him. It stood too still, its head tilted slightly to one side like a dog listening. Its eyes were too wide, too empty. "Phil?" I croaked. It didn't answer. Instead, it lifted one arm slowly and pointed at me. Then it stepped backward into the bathroom. I ran up the stairs, flashlight beam swinging wildly. I hit the top step and slammed the door behind me, locking it even though the lock barely worked. I turned, panting, heart hammering like a drum in my chest. Phil was standing in the hallway in his pajama pants, eyes squinting against the bathroom light. "Dude, what the hell are you doing?" I stared at him, breath catching. You said you needed help." He looked confused. "I've been asleep. I just got up to pee. Are you okay?" I looked past him. Nothing there. No other version of him. No sound from the stairs. But the cold in my bones hadn't left. Something had called me, and it wanted me to come back. The next morning, everything looked normal. Sunlight cut across the kitchen table. Dust danced lazily in the beams. Birds chirped outside like they hadn't missed a beat during the night. It all felt wrong, like a movie set after filming. A perfect imitation of real life, but hollow underneath. Phil was already up. He'd made toast, if you could call it that, burned it black, then drowned it in butter to hide the taste. He handed me a slice without a word and sat down across from me. I stared at him. He looked tired, pale. His eyes darted around the room like he was counting exits. "You okay?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, just chewed slowly. Then, "You were talking in your sleep." I blinked. What did I say? He shrugged. Didn't catch all of it. Something about the stairs and get it out of me. He paused. "What's down there, Josh?" I hesitated. "You don't remember last night?" "Bits of it. I remember you yelling, slamming the door. Then I saw you standing in the hallway like you saw a ghost. I swallowed. I saw you in the bathroom first. You were at the top of the stairs. Only you weren't you." Phil stiffened. "What do you mean?" I told him everything. The voice that sounded like his, the open door, the second basement, the pit, the thing that looked like him but wasn't, and how the real Phil had come out of our room just moments later. He didn't interrupt me once, just stared. Finally, he whispered, "You're not crazy. I think something's messing with us." That scared me more than anything. "We need to tell Mom," I said. Phil shook his head. "She's in the hospital, and we don't have a way to call." I looked at the old phone on the wall, useless during the blackout. Phil leaned forward, voice low. "If something's copying me, then how do I know it's you now?" I said before I could stop myself. We stared at each other. He sat back slowly. The room was too quiet. I could hear the refrigerator ticking from across the house. My breath felt sharp in my chest. Then Phil said something that didn't help at all. "I think I've seen you too." I blinked. "What?" "2 nights ago, I got up to get water, and I saw you standing in the living room, staring at the basement door. Your head was tilted, like you were listening." He paused. "But when I spoke, you didn't respond. You just walked away, down the stairs." I shook my head. "That wasn't me." "I know," he said, "because you were asleep when I checked." The air in the room changed, heavy. We both turned toward the basement door just off the living room, the one with the red walls waiting down below. It was open, just a crack. I stood up. "Did you open that?" Phil shook his head, rising too. The floor creaked, not under us, from the stairs. Then something ran up them, fast, loud. Thump, 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 thump. We slammed the door shut just as the sound hit it, so hard the hinges rattled. But it didn't try to push through. Whatever it was, it just stopped, dead silent. Phil locked the door, his hand shaking. Then we heard it, a whisper, right on the other side. "Let me in." It sounded exactly like me. Phil and I stood frozen, the lock clicking open like a dark invitation. Together, we pushed the door open and descended the cold concrete stairs, the walls closing in with every step. The air grew cold, thick with something heavy, something alive. The silence was shattered by a slow, dragging thud from below. I wanted to turn back. Phil didn't move. The second basement greeted us with darkness so complete it felt like swallowing. From the hole in the concrete floor, a shadow rose, twisted, broken, but hauntingly familiar. It reached for us, voice low and pleading. "I'm still here, let me in." Phil threw a piece of cement block from the ground at it, but it passed through the shadow like smoke. The thing's eyes, empty and endless, locked onto mine. I felt a coldness seep into my bones, a freezing despair that wasn't just fear. Phil grabbed my arm, but I was already slipping away, losing myself in the endless black. The shadow smiled, and my voice echoed back at me. "We belong here now," it whispered. The basement door slammed shut behind us. Outside, the field lay quiet, the wind whispering through the trees. Phil and I never left the basement that night. And now, when the wind blows just right, the neighbors say they hear 2 boys laughing down by the old house, though no one has ever seen them. Some doors don't just close, they trap, forever.